All right. Happy Let's Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Georgette. I'm the mom.
And I'm TJ. I'm the son.
And we both work and study in the field of psychology. And we are passionate about sharing what we know with you so that you can live your best life. And today we're going to talk about thoughts. Now, TJ and I spent a lot of time thinking about thoughts, thinking,
tongue twister,
which is one reason why people find us a little obnoxious. But today we're going to actually focus on those thoughts that come from our own inner critic, those critical inner voices. Why is this so important, TJ?
Why is this so important? Okay, well, in any study you look at that looks at thoughts, about 75 to 80% of the thoughts that the average person has in the day are going to be negative, believe it or not. And only about 20 to 25% are going to be positive. So why is this important? It's important to know this because it's important to know that we may have a subconscious initial tendency to want to go to the negative, but it's up to us to consciously make the decision and train those decisions to be a little more conscientious and positive. So not necessarily succumbing to those 75, 80, really just making that 20 to 25 just extremely powerful.
Right. Boom. And when we talk about critical inner voices, that's normal. That happens every once in a while. When you worry about it, it would be when it's a thought pattern that gets in the way of you actually reaching your full potential, that self-actualization we talked about. Because your brain wants to protect you, wants to warn you of things. And so it does go to the dark side. But you want to be wary of that and aware of that. Because that critical inner voice can permeate all areas of your life. Mm-hmm. I see it personally when I want a piece of chocolate and my inner voice tells me to have one. It's okay to have one, but then immediately tells me I suck because I have no self-control. So I can't win with my inner voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an inner voice?
My example. That was a good segue into, I guess, one of my examples. Yeah. So in the morning, I guess whenever I do this in a group setting with my clients, we talk about going through our day. 4:45, Monday through Friday, waking up, knowing I need to go to the gym, knowing I want to go to the gym, but immediately opening my eyes and thinking, I can just get 2 more hours, man. Mm-hmm. No one will know. You went yesterday. You'll be fine. Miss one day. Just miss one day. But this is every day that I have to go through this. So I guess that would be an easy example. And I have to tell myself, I need to go to the gym, obviously for my own health and sanity, maybe make a connection with some more high level purposes and goals that I have set, knowing that going to the gym is a high part of achieving a lot of those things. And I have to consciously kind of pull myself out of the gutter, get myself moving.
Right. Robert Firestone's done a lot of work on that critical inner voice, and he has some thoughts that I thought we could talk about and give some examples of how we can silence or quiet that critical inner voice that we have. So the first thing is to recognize what those thoughts are, identify in what areas of our life we are most critical, and identify what that inner voice is telling you. So when I think about my life, my work life, my inner voice is not the critical inner voice is not that loud, but personally it is. So there are different aspects of our lives where that voice is a little bit more critical than others.
Of course. Yeah. You got to find out what your stressors are. What stresses you or what makes you anxious enough to start having some of those unhelpful thoughts, because knowing when it comes and knowing what they sound like might give you a really perfect way of identifying, what your brain needs to hear instead.
Right. And our inner voice can talk to us in lots of different ways. One way in particular is like black and white type thinking, where like for me, it says you're either fat or you're thin, but we know there are a range of different sizes in between both of those, and probably healthier than either of those two options. Right.
Yeah. Our subconscious brain is very black and white, doesn't see a whole lot of gray area, because when you're acting in those, especially when you're getting stressed, anxious, triggered, whatever you want to call it, but your gaze just kind of gets smaller and smaller, very narrow-minded, very short-sighted, really just trying to look for the satisfaction now as opposed to kind of everything going on. So yes, instinctually seeing that black or white, but with, what we talk about, there's always gray area. There's always the gray area to help you find your own type of happiness in maybe some of the darkest situations.
Right. And maybe when we're thinking about relationships, one way our inner voice may speak to us is by personalizing, us making it feel like it's our fault when there are two people in a relationship or more.
I got you. You roast your buddy. Normally you guys go back and forth roasting. You roast him. It was a good one. It wasn't that personal, but for some reason he takes it personally. I'm an asshole. Damn. Yeah. I don't know why I did that. Why would I do something so awful, this and that? But then, hold on. We normally do this, right? Or just thinking it wasn't that bad. not condoning, right? Because you should go over your own behaviors as well, but taking both sides into consideration. Because yes, personalizing, we make it so much about me. We like to make ourselves the main star in everybody's story. And I'm not saying consciously we do, but just subconsciously, right? It's got to be, you got to attach in some level. I'm really acting this out, but you got to attach yourself in one level. So right off the bat thinking, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's about we, right? Because I'm sure your buddy was just having a bad day.
Right.
Maybe you hit a certain nerve, not to do it again. But if anything, I can learn for the future as opposed to just getting stuck on the asshole part. Now I'm making progress, growth, as opposed to just personalizing it.
Filter thinking is another way. Sometimes that critical inner voice talks to us, and sometimes that takes shape. And we sometimes refer to that as brain negativity bias. So we go to the dark side, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the subconscious brain wants to keep you as safe as it possibly can. It wants you to remember all of the dangers before any of the things that you do, because it thinks that it's helping you. It thinks that it's giving you an advantage by receiving that feeling first, that pain, so to speak, first. So just keep it in mind that those emotions don't necessarily tell the whole side of the story, right? Brain negativity bias, right, could simply be, you want to go ask a girl out. She'll never say yes. What? If I go up and do this and this and this, but just saying that, I can completely shift it. I have the choice to shift it. It might be harder, but I can work on that and say, maybe she'll say yes. It's only got to work once. I only got to get one girl to like me. Yeah, I could have a lower batting average in baseball. That's perfect. I'm right up there.
Assuming the worst or catastrophizing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did a good job with that word.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That gets you. That gets you.
We often respond to this critical inner voice with some kind of defense mechanism. But once we are aware of the voice, another thing that's really important to do is understand where those voices are coming from. You learned it from somewhere.
The little kid you just trying to get out. Mm-hmm. Their initial reactions is that, like, that kid in you that wants what you want when you want it, right? So it really is, and it sounds so cliche, but seriously, every reaction, every big reaction is also deeply rooted in some type of historical look at your past, just outside of your awareness, but it does keep all that into consideration. So once again, to kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like misconstrue or mess up, just blur the vision of whatever it is that you're looking at, right?
We receive messages all the time, and you think these messages don't really mean anything or have an impact, but they do. Like TJ said, we take these messages in, how we're supposed to look, how we're supposed to eat, how we're supposed to feel, how we're supposed to dress. We get those messages, and whether we are consciously aware that we're applying them to ourselves or if they're just sitting back there, we are hearing them. And sometimes that ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy where we start internalizing these messages.
We have 50, depending on what study you look at, between 50 to 70,000 thoughts in a day, the average person. Now, if you broke that down per hour, which of course you can't completely break it down, but that's close to 3,000. I believe it's 2,916 and some change. Look into it. But still, that's a lot per hour. And kind of like what my mom was talking about, we're constantly taking in information, constantly looking at information. Even as we speak, our torso is taking the information of our shirt, of the temperature, of other external factors, sending it to my brain. My brain's figuring out what to do and sending it back to those areas. So it's constantly electrical impulses going up and down. That's why we can have 50 to 70,000. That's why it could be so easy to initially look at the negative first, because that's just habitually how we are. But now we are consciously changing the habits.
And sometimes we use something called upward comparison, where we're looking and comparing ourselves to others, social media, so we get messages from, implied, but also very, very subconsciously. Like
core beliefs, right? Like when you have a belief about yourself, if you feel, maybe not necessarily in the forefront of your awareness, but just over time, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's like a pair of sunglasses that you'll have on, and you'll go around and look at things like that. And your thoughts won't actually say that perfectly, but it will say, oh, I can't do this for some other reason connected to this. It does not necessarily have to do anything with the stimuli. It has a lot to do with your thoughts going into it, right? So just making sure that whatever your view of the world is, making sure that it is in line with reality, because sometimes your subconscious brain doesn't give you the necessary information. Sorry,
right? And take in a bigger picture. Don't just look up, but look down. There are people all around you in worse shape. So sometimes we try to look at just at the people we want to be, and then we resent them. No, you should be happy for your position in life. I know personally my inner voice comes a lot from my anxiety, and knowing that in and of itself is empowering for me. Like I get where it comes from. And so I can do something about it once I understand it a little bit more.
You know, behaviorally what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't need to do something that's a high neurological energy type of activity. You need something more lower energy to dim you down from an anxious response, right? So calming, serenity, the crocheting that you do, the grading and other things that are going to stimulate the brain in a different way and get you away. So it does give you a better awareness of how the thoughts can sound away from the anxious, but also behaviorally what can go away, because behaviorally and thoughts are the two really only things that we can focus in and connect with that will better help us control the emotions, which tend to be what really is holding a lot of people back.
So although it's important to understand where those voices are coming from, I don't think people should dwell on it, because you don't want to think poorly of someone or blame them for something, because we all say things without realizing the impact that our words have sometimes. It's good to understand to a certain degree, but it's also at some point you just move forward. And when you're moving forward, you're going to start responding to those voices. You know, talk back, question them. Is this true? Is it important? Is it helpful? Does it matter? I mean, question your own inner voice that's talking to you. Challenge it with evidence. So I say jokingly all the time, I don't have any self-control. I do. I have self-control when I want to apply it. I mean, I've just been doing a diet for 2 weeks straight. I didn't chew anything. I mean, if that's not self-control, I don't know what is. So it's in there. So think about those, you know, when you're feeling weak, think about all those times in the past you've been strong.
Yeah. Sometimes it's more important, not necessarily to be strong, but just to feel strong. So if you can feel it, you're going to be more likely to act it, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
And this may sound silly, but thank your voice, because your voice is trying to protect you.
It's making you aware.
So say, you know, I appreciate your concern, but I got this. You know, say it out loud, because that might look odd, but.
No, you say it out loud. Then people don't talk to you, so you can stay a little more by yourself. It's fantastic.
Talk to yourself like a friend. We've talked about that before. Take a break, change a channel, get involved in a flow activity, just like teacher was just saying. Consider the worst case scenario. Sometimes that helps, and why that helps is even if your voice is correct, you think about what's the worst that can happen and you can handle it.
Yeah.
Right.
Marcus Aurelius started his days with negative meditations by looking at the day in as negative of a scope as he possibly could, because then when he opened his eyes, another thing he did was diaphragmatically breathe, so he kept his body at a much more calm state than what he was seeing, so kind of playing that little, kind of messing with his brain a little bit. But then when he opened his eyes, realizing there's no way it's going to be that bad.
Right.
It almost relieved him in a way, right? So not forcing everyone to do that, but just identifying that is something that works, but it is a little bit more challenging. But that's what meditation's all about too.
Yeah, see, I have anxiety, and so I worry. I'm
you might not want to
worrier.
You might not want to do that.
But it actually, surprisingly, it actually helps me, because I automatically go to the worst situation. Then in my brain, I figure out how I'm going to handle it. I know I've got it. If it does happen, if it doesn't, great. But at least I've kind of planned for the fact that I can handle it.
And immediately planning it like that is what, like you said, how we dwell on things. Mm-hmm. The easiest way to stop dwelling on things is to take action. And some people think it has to be physical, but also be mental. Once again, I'm feeling these emotions towards it. We know that my emotions have a weird way of making me forget all the other relative information. So I focus in on that. Once again, try to let it go as best you possibly can with your thoughts and with your breathing, because the better that you can let it go and get your focus in somewhere else, that's what's, again, going to be one of those things that's really helpful in your life. Because if you can just feel things, let them go, and teach yourself how to do that, once again, the better it's going to be when things actually happen to you. You get stressed out less.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you how fine a line is. I mean, that balancing that you have to do, how much is okay, how much negative thought is okay, and how much isn't. Because like for me with anxiety, I could go to the dark side, and I have to be very aware of that, which is why it helps that I know I have anxiety.
Well, with that awareness, if you once again want to go all the way back to what we said in the beginning, like the 80 to 20%. So what is that? So that's 4 negative thoughts for every 1 positive thought. So really thinking about what that looks like, because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, we're screwed, right? But no, not necessarily, because something happens and I get triggered. Once again, that instinctual is going to be driven out of me first. So then it's going to be like, oh, I'm stupid. I made a mistake, or this situation sucks, or I blame other people. But regardless, those are 4. Very, very quickly, stop myself, find that diaphragmatic breath to calm down my body, or not necessarily just find, but create outside of this moment thoughts to focus on that'll help me. And then I enter in with 1 balanced thought after those unhelpful thoughts. So those 4 that were negative, that 1 very positive one, that conscious one, is really so much more powerful, even though it's only 25% of the time, right? It's just finding when you're going through those tangents, shifting the focus, tangent, focus. And when the better you get at shifting your focus and being aware of the focus and where it's going, and knowing that we tend to want to go more so to the focusing on the negative, the best chance you're going to have in life, once again, with your thoughts and with your behaviors, helping you out through the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Understanding how our voice impacts our behavior is the next thing that you have to know in this process of trying to silence or quiet those voices. I know that when my voice tells me I don't have any self-control, it gives me permission to self-destruct. It gives me permission to have, instead of just one piece of chocolate, the whole bag. And because I know that, I can stop that before it happens. So that awareness again.
The only thing we can do from a behavioral health standpoint is build awareness to where we may tend to go from a negative standpoint, because we're all very, very conditioned by this point, right? And it happens very quickly, but there's still a lot of things that are in our control. It's just those things get kind of drowned out by those automatic responses, the negative emotions, but you have the power within your body and your own mind, without any help outside, to get through it, right? It's in there.
Right. And then the last step, of course, is just to then change those behaviors, practice gratitude, focus on your strengths, compromise with your voice. So that's like finding a balance between self-improvement and self-acceptance.
And also, one thing you talked about was the gratitude. So obviously, as actually practicing this with, people that, feel like they have a lot of behavioral health issues, the gratitude is like, oh my gosh, the gratitude, why do we really need to do this? So kind of going back to what Mom said, if you are just constantly thinking negative, right, and you're just watching TV or doing all the things that negative thinking normally gets to, which is nothing, if you just force yourself, no thoughts, no emotions, just say, I'm going to just do a gratitude list, write down 50 things, and I'm going to try to do it, right? And you start, you may not believe it, but the better that you do, the more that you get, the more likely you're going to be able to change the thoughts and actually have a better control over those emotions. So obviously that's more challenging. It's better than watching that 8th episode of that TV show that you're watching, right? And like what we talked about, a lot of the behaviors that are worth doing are going to come with some resistance, right? Calling out to friends to reach out. Oh, come with some resistance. You might want to do it anyways, right? You want to do something artistic, like something as simple as drawing, or like I said, a gratitude list. You're going to get met with some resistance. Oh, that's stupid. But no, it's not stupid from a scientific standpoint. This is something that outside of your thoughts and emotional awareness, just behaviorally making yourself do these things will open you up and make yourself more receptive and open to alternative thought patterns and actually changing your life. So when you look at some of these behaviors, like, man, all the behaviors are the same thing. They're all these boring, artistic, or finding yourself type of stuff. These are the things that going through that first initial resistance and practicing actually get you to what you want, which is happiness and contentment, which a lot of us don't have in our everyday life. Boom!
Well, on that note.
Was that enough? I don't know.
This week, we want you to think about those inner critical voices, listen to them, pay attention to them. They can be bullies. And how do you stop a bully? You take the power away. We hope we gave you some strategies today to help you do just that. Have a great week, and we will see you next Tuesday for Let's Talk About It Tuesday. Bye. All right, record. Stop.